concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Livestream. I hope you're enjoying the flying. I'll just let that finish. I thought it was a pretty good flight. I wanted to share it with you. Ooh, look at him go. Man, this Nazgul Evoke. And oh, there we go. That's the end of the flight. Yes, there we go. Whoop, there we go. Upside down. Woo. You can hear a little bit of background noise. That's because I'm running a print on that 3D printer back there, so apologies for that, but I'm working on a review of that printer, and I don't plan on leaving the printer there permanently because it's loud and it takes up a lot of space, but it's a great place to put it while I'm doing the review. So yeah, I'm showing off my new workbench. Finally have a workbench that's deep enough to put a printer on it. So if you hear other background noise, it's because my window's open because it's a freaking beautiful day. It's summer is finally broke here. We're getting beautiful weather, so I just want that the beautiful outside air to come, the smell. Anyway, I want to also catch you up that today is not a White Claw day. I decided that, you know what, let's get back to our roots. This is Armida Barrel Bourbon whiskey finished in pear brandy rum and Sicilian Amaro casks. See, I know what all those words mean. And this is bottle number 10,072. So, limited edition. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Cube Guy says, can I ask a question? You totally can, Cube Guy. That's what we do here. You ask questions, and I do my best to answer them. Sorry. I was using this camera while shooting the 3D printer review, and then I had to put it back, and I didn't check the focus. So 1 second. Well, I get it refocused. There we go. Oh, there we go. Beautiful. Ooh. Okay. Have I tried printing in an enclosure or box before? S. Grace, I've never tried printing in an enclosure. I have the impression that enclosures are mostly not needed for PLA, TPU, and filaments. Like, you gotta have an enclosure for ABS or it'll warp, is what I hear. I don't print a lot of ABS, I don't print any ABS. But I've never messed with it, so I have not. Yeah, so you guys are going to ask questions, and I'm going to answer them. We're going to do that for about 2 hours, and then, you know, we'll have a good time. We'll have a good time. Okay. And I want to start with this question from Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia, thank you for a £5 super chat also. Quadrophenia is having trouble getting a file to download from GitHub, and I got to I got to just find any GitHub repo. So Quadrophenia, here is a GitHub repo. Doesn't really matter which one, it's all the same. Downloading files from GitHub is a pain in the ass if you don't know how to do it. It's totally unintuitive how you do it. So check this out. I'm going to click on this hex file. This is in the releases, whatever. I'm going to click on the hex file, and then you would think that what you would do is hit the download button, but that is not what you do. That will not work, because if you hit the download button, you just get this BS. That's not what you want. What you want to do is right-click the download button and save link as. And that will bring up this file, which will let you download the hex file. It's just a quirk of GitHub. It's just a quirk of GitHub. And once you know, when you go, okay, now I know how to do it. But, anyway, now you know. Thank you so much for that super chat, Quadrophenia. In case you're new here, and by the way, if you're new here, if it's your first time seeing one of my streams, thank you so much for being here. And say hello. Say hello. Because I'm glad you're here. And I would like to welcome you. Here's what's going on. This is my main screen right here. I will be watching your chats here on the left side. And I will be answering your questions. And I will be watching these beautiful people over here. These lovely, lovely sausages. The most attractive, smartest people in the world. And the reason they're like that, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, because you could ask, does becoming one of my patrons make you smarter and more attractive and more desirable to the preferred person? Or is it smart, sexy people who become my patrons? Chicken and the egg. I don't know. But I do know that if you want to hang out with these beautiful people and also take up a whole half of my screen during live streams, you can become a patron. There's a link in the video description to my Patreon page. You can subscribe for as little as $2 a month or more if you feel like I've earned it. That's what I like to say. But I also have to let you know that if you want to make sure I get your message, just hit the $sign down here at the bottom. Leave a super chat. I will be reading those throughout the stream. But with that all out of the way. Oof. Oh, got all that beautiful, got all this stuff out of the way. What's the volume on the drink? The volume, the ABV, it's 113.9 proof, 56.95% alcohol by volume, according to the label. Yeah. This stuff is the story of how I came to buy these bourbon. This is not this specific bottle. This is not the first bottle I ever bought. It's a funny story. This is like, it's like, let's just say it's expensive. It's more expensive bourbon than I normally buy. I normally buy like Knob Creek, which is like $40 for 750 milliliters or something. I don't know. But I wanted to impress somebody. I wanted to impress somebody with a gift from my home state of Tennessee. well, what's Tennessee got? Well, it turns out there's some distilleries in Tennessee. So I bought him a bottle of expensive bourbon. And then I realized you can't ship liquor internationally. This was a person in another country. See, someone from the USA, I wouldn't be like, and here is a gift of Tennessee. I'd be like, no one cares from the USA, right? They was impressed. But I thought, they're in a foreign country, we'll show off our local delicacies. So I ended up with this bottle of expensive bourbon that I could not give away. And then I drank it, and I was like, oh, this is good. So that's how I came to. So, I mean, Jory says JB's showing off his nice bourbon, and I'm over here sipping on a Capri Sun. But I do drink like White Claw and alcoholic seltzers every other week, so it's not like I'm a snob. Drink what you drink. Let's get some questions here. Let's get some questions. Eddie Horani says, I was watching the Evoke video. It was interesting what you said about the GPS. Is there a way you can build us a reliable GPS Cinewhoop quad? Eddie, the limitation with GPS is twofold, okay? The first limitation is hardware-wise. A freestyle racing, a small drone is very difficult to make GPS work well because all the electronics are so close into each other that there is a lot of electrical interference. Those problems can be solved with sufficient application of engineering. Obviously, like the DJI Mini. The DJI Mavic Mini is a very small, sub 250 gram drone and has wonderful GPS hold. So it can be done. But typically on a racing or freestyle drone, it is not done well. The GPS tends to have a hard time locking in satellites. It doesn't work reliably. That's not always true, but it's often true. The second half of that is that the Betaflight developers, at least, are not that interested in GPS. And you might say, well, shouldn't they serve their customers? What are you talking about? They all work for free. It's an open source project. They just work on what they want to work on, and they're just not that interested in working on autonomous flight. And in addition to that, there's only so much room on the chip, on the processor, for program memory. So adding a whole bunch of code, and it would be a substantial amount of code, don't get me wrong. Adding a whole bunch of code related to GPS would take space away from other features that they want to work on. So, and that's why it's great that guys like Pavel Spikowski, who is I see him right here in the chat. Very good to have you here, Pavel. Pavel Spikowski is a developer for iNav firmware. And iNav is designed for autonomous flight. It's focused on sensor-assisted flight like GPS, like barometer, like sonar, and so forth. So if you want to build a Cinewhoop that flies really well with GPS, my opinion is that you should not bother with Betaflight. Betaflight GPS is useful for knowing your GPS coordinates if you crash. It's useful for knowing your speed. It's actually that's one of the things I think it's most useful for. Turns out GPS speed is actually super accurate. Even though position is only accurate to within like a meter or a few meters, depending on conditions, GPS speed is actually super accurate. So it's useful for various things, but not for return to home because the Betaflight devs, and they don't even call it return to home. They call it GPS rescue, right? Betaflight doesn't have position hold, altitude hold, any kind of autonomous flight. It's terrible for that. Dakesh Tripathi. Stop spamming my chat. You got timed out once. I'm going to time you out again. And if you spam the chat more, I'm just going to ban you. Stop spamming the chat. You stupid little hands up. You have my attention. That's too much. Jesus Christ. Where was I? That's two. One more time. You're done. Ask questions. Don't spam the chat. Thank you. Okay, moving on. So, if you want to build a Cinewhoop, the great thing is, like, if you were to compare iNav and Betaflight for, like, hardcore racing, or if you tried to get just like the most perfect freestyle tune, iNav would not be at the same level as Betaflight. I feel comfortable making that assertion. iNav flies pretty well. It doesn't, it's just not where the development effort is going, is to getting that last nth percent of performance. But for a Cinewhoop, the beautiful thing is that for a Cinewhoop, it might fly actually pretty decent because you're not usually pushing Cinewhoops that hard. So if you want return to home, build an iNav quad, or go over to the dark side and build one with Argipilot. Argipilot has amazing autonomous flight capabilities. However, Argipilot is not optimized for acro flying. It's not optimized for small quadcopters or aircraft. It's optimized more for bigger camera platform style things, but it certainly flies very well and has great GPS functionality. Anyway. Yeah, I saw GemFan time that guy out once because he was spamming. And he comes back and he spams with, this time with emojis. Okay. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. Just don't do it again. Dominic Quad says, why did you delete the video with the giveaway? Yeah, okay, so let me talk about that in case anyone noticed. The giveaway is still on, by the way. Nothing has changed about the giveaway. So in that video, that was my product roundup. In that video, and by the way, the video is coming back for the record. In that video, I talked about the Gravity Loss FPV Pro 2 frame. Let me pull that up. Hold on. I talked about this, and me and Blunty talked about this Gravity Loss frame. And by the way, I hope it's very clear when we do the new product roundup that it's just our off-the-cuff impressions of a product. Like, we don't do a ton of research. We're just like, here it is. Take a look. What do you think? You know, so it turns out that we got a couple things. We missed a couple things about this frame that I thought were important. First of all, we talked about the titanium one, but we didn't talk about the fact that they also have a regular carbon fiber one. I complained about the weight of the titanium one. Whereas this regular one, I mean, at this point, you're almost buying an Apex, but wait, there's more. What is the weight of the aluminum one, or the carbon fiber one? Where is it? 149 grams. That's still pretty heavy. But the other thing that they have that we missed is that it has these molded carbon fiber arms. It is not layered carbon fiber, it's molded carbon fiber. And they say that gives it additional strength. And, you know, we go in, we look at the products, we talk about them, we show them, we give our opinion, and we move on. But I felt like the fact that we missed that was kind of a big deal, since that's a big selling point. And that was just an oversight. And, you know, it happens. The other thing is that people are telling me that it has a lifetime warranty. Lifetime warranty on the arms, which is that certainly changes things. Now, I thought, okay, you know what? We were pretty hard on the titanium one. We left out one of the main selling points, which is the molded carbon fiber arms and the lifetime warranty. I thought to myself, you know, I should edit this. I don't know if you know this, but in YouTube, you can go into a video editor. Now, I can't do this right now because it's being processed. And you can't add new things to a video. You can't do that. But you can slice out old things. You can slice a part of the video out and excise it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the section of the video about the gravity. I'm going to take that out. We'll just maybe I'll do a review of the frame, but we'll just leave that out. It was negative and it was incomplete. But when I did that, for some reason, YouTube deleted the audio for a whole bunch of the video, and like half the video has no audio. So you can actually undo. So at the moment, I am undoing that change to put the video back, because I don't want to just have half the video be missing. And it is in the process of being undone. You can see here it says processing. And the video will go back up, and maybe I'll do something else about the gravity loss frame. But the GoPro giveaway, nothing has changed about it. I'm just waiting for the change to undo itself so that I can put the video back up again. Drone Racer, you cannot add text. There used to be the ability in YouTube to put annotations on screen after the video was released. It was super useful because, like right now, I could pin a comment below the video and say, hey guys, the gravity lost frame, we overlooked this one aspect of it, so take that with a grain of salt. But a lot of people won't see the comment. I can put a little pop-out in the upper right corner of the screen linking to another video. That's something, but you used to be able to actually literally put annotations on screen, and people abused them and they got super annoying, and YouTube got rid of them. So unfortunately, it was a very, very good way of correcting or adding information after a video was published, and there really isn't any great way to do that today, unfortunately. So anyway, yeah, a lot of people don't know that you can cut parts of a YouTube video out without re-uploading the video. You can't add anything, but you can remove it. One of the biggest examples of that I remember is Corridor Crew. I don't know if you guys watch Corridor Crew. It's a channel. They're digital effects artists in LA, and they have a channel, a sort of behind the scenes channel. Linus Tech Tips, who is a tech reviewer, did a video super critical of Red digital cameras, and they responded to him saying, "Well, Linus, if you were actually a filmmaker instead of just a tech reviewer and video nerd, then you would know." And they said all this stuff about Red digital cameras, and if I remember right, some of it was inaccurate, and they cut it out, and it's gone. Another example of this is Mark Rober. His glitter bomb video included some footage. A person who he sent the glitter bomb to actually faked the theft. He didn't know about it at the time. He found out afterwards that the theft was faked, and he cut those sections out of the video, so the video no longer. And people don't know that you can do this because they look at the video and they see that it's got whatever 12 million views. It's got all the comments. And they don't realize that you can cut sections out of a video without re-uploading it, but you can. So, there you go. Little YouTube. Any re-review of the Evoke analog versus DJI flight performance, asks Jason Lee. I don't know about that, Jason. I mean, the big question that we might try to answer is why the analog flew so different. Some people have suggested that it was the X configuration versus the Dead Cat configuration. I didn't mention that in the video, and the reason I didn't mention it is that I don't think, I mean, I've flown Dead Cats, I've flown X's. I don't think that was the difference. If I had thought that was the difference, I would have mentioned it. I mean, there is some small difference in how a Dead Cat is tuned and flies versus a true X, but I don't think it's that big of a difference. To me, the biggest difference was the weight. When I went back and watched the footage, as I was editing, when I watched the footage of the DJI Quad, I could just see that it was heavier. It just, when you hit the throttle, it just went up and down like slower. I think the weight is what was the biggest difference. Now, that would be easy to test by adding a dead weight to the analog quad and seeing if it flies different. The other big difference with the analog is that the camera is very wide angle. And I mean, I haven't measured this, but just while flying it, it feels very wide angle to me. And that means that when you use a wide angle lens, it looks like the ground is going by much faster. And I kind of wonder how much of it is just that it feels like the ground is moving so fast that it just like hypes me up and makes me want to fly like a crazy person. I don't know. I'm sure the weight plays into it, though. Aber the Ham suggests that the latency is coming into play. I do think that the latency of the Cadets Polar makes a difference. But I do also fly a lot of DJI quads and a lot of analog quads, and I can say that the Nazgul Evoke flew. I don't normally have that kind of a reaction going from digital to analog, or vice versa. So I think it was the weight. I think it was a combination of the lighter weight, which just makes the quad more responsive, and the wider FPV camera field of view, which makes the quad feel like it's going faster. I'm sure the field of view is wider because I was having so much trouble gauging proximity to obstacles, which when your field of view changes, where an obstacle is in frame, like you have a sense that if the obstacle is here in the frame, I'm going to miss it, right? And that sense was just way off for me. I kept just crashing into things that I should have missed. Yeah, that's what I think the differences were. Everybody, again, Run Puppy FPV, I don't think it's Dead Cat versus True X. I just don't think that the frame geometry makes that much of a difference. That's my opinion. I can't prove it. I mean, they make a Dead Cat analog, and I could get the Dead Cat analog one and fly them side by side, but I probably won't. I can say I really enjoyed flying the analog one, though. RC Addict asks, when flashing the Express LRS Happy Model Slim Pro, do I need to reflash the receiver? I don't know the answer to that for sure, RC Addict, but personally, anytime I changed any of the options on the module, I would reflash the receivers with matching options. If that option doesn't exist in the receiver settings, then maybe it's fine. So, let's see here. Edovex in the Discord asks, speaking of the iFlight Nazgul series, I had the best customer experience with them. The USB port on mine broke off. They made it super easy to get the flight controller replaced. That's really good to hear, Edovex. That is a thing that unfortunately seems to happen with iFlight flight controllers maybe more than it should. Ramail Robertson asks, can you talk a bit about motor KV? I'm curious about the Stan FPV 2203 1500 KV. All right, let's take a look at that motor first of all. Let's take a look at that motor. Stan FPV 2203 1500 KV. When talking about KV, well, it's only available in 1 kV, so you don't have a lot of choices, do you? Okay. There you go. The KV determines how fast the motor will try to spin relative to the battery voltage. So if you have a motor that is 1000 kV and you apply 1 volt of AC, 1 volt to it through the ESC, obviously, you can't just apply 1 volt DC across the leads, but if you apply 1 volt to a motor with 1000 kV rating, it'll make 1000 RPM. So the higher the voltage, the faster the motor will try to spin, and the higher the kV, the faster the motor will try to spin. So you want a motor that will spin a prop in a range of speeds that is ideal for the prop to produce thrust. If the prop spins too slowly, it will not make enough thrust to get the quad off the ground. And if the prop spins too quickly, the prop will, it's called stall. It'll stall, and it will become very, very inefficient and will make a horrible sound. And then eventually, if the prop spins too quickly, if the tip of the prop approaches or exceeds the speed of sound, then very, very bad things happen, and you don't want that. So you want to be able to produce a prop speed that produces enough RPM, that produces enough thrust that the quad flies well. So you match the motor KV to your prop's diameter and to your battery voltage. And that's why we see with a 5-inch prop, we have 2400 RPM on 4S batteries, because that produces an RPM and a tip speed that is optimal for that prop diameter. On 6S, It's a higher voltage, so we've reduced the kV to produce a similar RPM. That's a very, very simple discussion of motor kV. The reality is that there's more going on than just the motor produces RPM. And you could have, and I have had 45-minute long conversations. They're on my channel about this topic. Like, for example, this is a great one. This was a great live stream. So this is a fantastic live stream for understanding sort of motor stuff. It's a little advanced, but what about I did a video with him where we specifically discussed kV. No. This is the one where we specifically discussed kV. Okay. I Am Destructo Man makes a point about the true meaning of kV. Let's go just check his comment here. I Am Destructo Man says, kV does not mean RPM increase per volt. When a motor spins, there's an electromagnetic field that is created that generates motor in the voltage in the motor's coils, and that is known as back EMF, and back EMF is expressed as RPM per volt. It's not the same as kV. kV gives us the relationship between the back EMF and the motor's RPM. So a 2800 kV motor will give you 1 volt of back EMF if it's spinning at 2800 RPM. I Am Destructo Man, you're right that in reality you will not get 2800 RPM at 1 volt. In reality, like for example, there's friction, right? So what you actually do when you measure a motor kV is you spin the motor at a known RPM, just like using a drill or a motor or something. You spin the motor at a known RPM and you measure the voltage that the motor is producing. And that's sort of the inverse of what happens when you spin the motor. When you spin the motor, you put current through the coil, you generate, and it spins the motor. Nevertheless, like we know that there's friction, there's drag in the bearings, there's drag on the prop, and so you will not actually get the full kV, but it's still a useful way of thinking about motor kV and the effect of kV on what the motor and the prop will try to do. Yeah. So evaluating a motor. If you're a beginner and you're trying to evaluate a motor kV, the best thing to do is to just emulate someone whose opinion you trust. So Stan FPV makes this motor. It's a 2203 1500 kV motor. What did he make it for? Right? What did he make? What was his intention in designing this motor? Well, let's see. Let's see what he says about it. Dropped them to the lowest kV they could reliably handle. We got a crazy balance of performance and efficiency across multiple uses. They will fly your Featherlight frame on 4 inches to 6 inches for 35 to 55 minutes on 4S. So here he's talking about a Featherlight frame. It'd be nice if he gave a weight, but maybe he's referring to a specific frame. Is that a specific frame? It is. Okay, I got it. It's not. So here is Stan FPV Feather Frame Kit Ultralight FPV Drone. Right? Okay. And they are beasts on 6 inch. So we need to look at what his intention is with the motor. What he seems to be saying here is that the 3390 kV motor what they did is they dropped it to half the kV. That means the motor is going to make significantly less thrust, but is going to be more efficient. That's the bottom line, is what it seems to be saying. He also is saying, and this is true, the wide stator motors are less responsive because their mass is their rotational mass is further from the shaft. But he tries to spin that into an advantage. He says they have high torque and flywheel effect. I don't think that's a plus for a motor. No offense, Stan. On a motor, first of all, I don't think it's a given that a wider diameter motor has more torque. In fact, I believe that the prevailing wisdom is that the torque of a motor is proportional to its volume, not its shape. The flywheel effect is real. A taller motor with more of its mass near the shaft will have less rotational inertia than a flatter motor with more of its mass far away from the shaft. That makes the motor less responsive. That's not an upside. That's a downside. Flywheel effect on a motor is not an upside because we want the motor to be as responsive as possible. Incredible heat dispersion, yes. A wider pancake motor will have more airflow through it and a better heat dispersion. So I'm a little suspicious of his "that's good for everything" claim. Like, how often in life do you find that one motor, one tool is good for every application? Yeah, I'm a little suspicious of that. Nevertheless, you could just look to the designer. Yeah. 1500 kV, he says on 4-inch to 6-inch props. I mean, 2203 is not a massive motor volume, especially for a 6-inch prop. Let's do the math on that motor volume. 22 divided by 2 is 11 millimeter radius. Radius squared times pi, and then times the height. 2203 times 3 millimeters. We have about 1,139 cubic millimeters of stator volume. Now let's just compare that to a 2306. So 23 divided by 2 is 11.5 millimeter radius squared times 3.14. 2306 times 6 millimeter height. So that motor is 1139 out of 2491. That motor is 46% the volume of a 2306 motor. And some people would say that a 2306 motor is marginal on a 6-inch prop. So it feels to me like this motor is going to lack the torque because it has such low volume. It's going to lack the torque to authoritatively spin a 6-inch prop. Now, you could certainly say, well, it's 1500 kV. It's not going to try to it's not going to be spinning very fast anyway, and that's valid. You could also say, if paired with an ultralight build, there will be less need for torque and responsiveness. The quad will the motor will unload faster because the quad is so light it'll start moving faster. I'm skeptical that a 2306 motor. They are amazing Featherlight freestyle racing motors on 5-inch. For Featherlight, yeah. I think the key thing about these motors is that he's aiming them at very, very lightweight builds. And when a build is very lightweight, it begins moving quickly. It changes speed quickly, and the motors don't need as much torque to make the quad change speed. But I'm a little skeptical. 2203. I mean, that's a fair motor size, I guess. I've been curious. I've been curious about lightweight 5-inch builds, like the 2004 motors used on the Umagod 250. Great motors, and about the only way to get under 250 grams on a 5-inch. But if you didn't have a 250 gram limit and you wanted to build a lightweight 5-inch, it feels like a 2203 motor or like a 2105 motor would be better because a 2004 is really a little small for a 5-inch prop. That's my take. Bannister Post points out they do have a 5mm shaft. Yeah, T-mount shafts are annoying. Have you seen this? Bob Ruge is making motors. This is what is this, a 21mm motor? He's making motors with M3 shafts. What? Why? Yeah, that makes a lot of damn sense, right? Instead of a T-mount, we go to an M3 shaft. Holy crap. T-mount is so annoying. I mean, it's lightweight. That's why we do it. So that's pretty cool. David Tagishian says torque equals force times distance from the axis of rotation. David, you are correct, but when taking into account all of the factors about a brushless motor with more diameter does not necessarily create more torque than a brushless motor with less diameter. Again, we can go back to Chris Rosser and Ryan Harrell, who have talked about this in depth. The torque that a motor creates is more or less proportional to the volume of its stator. So by making the stator taller, we get more volume and therefore more torque because it just has more volume to build magnetic field strength. The other thing that happens is when you have a taller motor, your magnet surface area, the mating area between the magnet and the stator is larger. So you can transfer more magnetic field strength into the stator and rotate the motor harder. Whereas when you have a motor with more diameter, yes, the basic torque equation does dictate that a longer lever arm creates more torque, but you have these, think about like a 2203 motor. It's just got little 3mm magnets. Now take the same volume and make a taller motor. I don't know what the dimensions would be. You're going to have big, tall magnets. And so even though you have a shorter lever arm, you are generating more force, if you will. And the bottom line is that the torque is proportional to the volume. That's the short version. Okay. JamFan Hobby says it makes sense, but try and get the motor manufacturers to change to M3. That's practically impossible. I mean, we'll see, JamFan Hobby. Bob Ruge has... I mean, JamFan Hobby, here's what I would say to that. How many things can you name that Kebab did first that everybody else copied? I can think of like a few, right? So Kebab says, hey, we're going to make M3 props. I think it's like not guaranteed, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that other especially because, and JamFan, you know this, and I can say this to you because you make props and not motors, so I won't sound like I'm taking a shot at you. You know as well as I do the motor manufacturers are just looking for some new thing to sell. Right? Hey guys, what do we got? I don't know. We're just making motors. They're all the same. It's just a stator and a bell and some windings. Hey, what if we made them purple? Oh, that's good. We'll make a purple one. They're not buying the purple one, guys. Oh, shit. What are we going to do? I don't know. Oh. Kebab's come up with a new M3 shaft. Do the whole line. No, T-mounts are out. Do the whole line in M3s. They'll have to buy new props too, JamFan Hobby. Anyway. So, to say, oh, no one will do that. Yeah. I'm not saying everybody copies Bob, but a lot of people do copy Bob. 2506 motors. A lot of people making 2506 motors. People pointing out, yeah, this is true. I didn't call this out, but people pointing out that the motors do come with a 5mm adapter. You can see it right here. So you can use 5mm props on the M3 shaft. FPV Nerd. Oh, FPV Nerd, I'm going to get your question, then I've got Super Chats. I haven't read Super Chats, and we're like 45 minutes into the stream. Apologies to the people who left a Super Chat. FPV Nerd asks, do you think Sharkbite is going to take over the HD market next year, Josh, especially when TBS and Immersion RC start to bring out their own HD0-based systems? I don't think Sharkbite will take over the HD market, and neither does Sharkbite. Carl from HD0 said, and he said this in an email. He sent me an email a little while back basically saying, hey, nice to meet you. Let me introduce myself, because we hadn't personally been introduced before. One of the things he said in that email was that Sharkbite is not intended to compete with DJI. That Sharkbite is intended to be the replacement for analog. And I think that's a very smart move on his part, because I don't think it's going to be easy to beat DJI at their own game. And I've said this for a long time. It's the same message. That if you compare Sharkbite to DJI, a lot of people will feel that it loses. And instead, if you say, look, all you guys who fly analog, wouldn't you rather fly this? I think that's a much more compelling case. So no, DJI has taken over the digital, the high def. DJI has taken over the high definition FPV market. They own it. It will be extremely difficult to unseat them. And I don't mean, I mean because what they've done is extremely difficult and expensive. But I am excited. I would love for TBS to bring out a Sharkbite Unify. I would love for Immersion RC to bring out a Tramp Sharkbite HD0 video transmitter, because here's what I've learned from this interview with Chris Rosser. Carl from HD0 did an interview for Chris Rosser, and basically he said, I'm an engineer. I have invented this video system. I don't really know how to make a video transmitter. And I was really shocked, because my thought has been, oh, to make a video transmitter, how hard is that? These guys know what they're doing. It turns out, no. And it turns out, and I don't want to misquote Carl, but the gist of the conversation that he had with Chris in Chris's video was that he would really like to partner with somebody who knows how to make a damn video transmitter. Because things like circuit design and heat dissipation and so forth, those are things that Immersion RC and TBS know how to do very well. And Carl will give them the chips and help them develop it. So I think that would be amazing, and I would love for it to happen. Right now, the video transmitters that we've got, they're Fat Shark Sharkbite video transmitters. My impression is that they are mostly being designed by HD0 with input from Fat Shark and testing from Fat Shark, but Fat Shark isn't doing any of the manufacturing. That's my belief. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that's true, and if I'm wrong, I'll make a correction. But and HD0 is great at designing these chips that do this transmission, but they don't know how to actually make an FPV video transmitter. So it would be amazing if TBS would partner with HD0 to make such a thing, and frankly anybody. But I would love to see TBS do it, because you know they would knock it out of the park. I would love to see Immersion RC do it, because you know they would knock it out of the park. I would love to see Rush do it, because they make good video transmitters. I mean, anybody would be good, though. I mean, if like AKK were to do it, I'd be like, because the last thing Sharkbite needs is to have AKK. AKK video transmitters can be solid. They're not always solid, though. So, James Smith says Sharkbite has poor penetration, and YouTube auto-modded his message, perhaps because it had the word penetration in it. Thanks, YouTube. Sharkbite doesn't... We don't know, James, because we haven't seen a Sharkbite 1-watt VTX. We've only seen 200 milliwatts. And I think if you compare SharkBite at 200 milliwatts to analog at 200 milliwatts, I think they're on par. So. Grace, the Rush Tank VTXs use Smart Audio 2.1, which is dBm values. Okay, let me get these super chats because I've gone way too almost an hour into the stream. I haven't caught up on super chats. Sincere apologies to the folks who left super chats. I probably would be getting a lot more super chats if I was reading super chats. So that's bad for me too. But what can you do? Lit Sculpture, thank you for a $5 super chat. Using Express LRS on a TX16S, I want to send LQ to the DJI goggles. Crossfire Lua allows us with channel assignments. Is it possible with Express LRS? Yes. Lit Sculpture, all Express LRS receivers output RSSI and LQ on channels aux11 and aux12. I don't know which is which. Let me try to ask on the Express LRS Discord right now. Actually, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to ask in Livestream chat because one of my patrons will know. That's the value of my Patreon. Which ELRS channel is LQ and which is RSSI? Okay. Boom. Okay, let's see let's see how quick they answer. There, boom. There you go. Less than a minute later. LQ is 11, RSSI is 12. Thank you, Bashizi, for that. That's why you joined my Patreon. I mean, obviously, you also joined my Patreon because you value what I do and you want to support me. That's obviously. But also, you get access to my Discord server, and these guys are amazing. So 12 is RSSI and 11 is LQ. That's the answer to your question, Lit Sculpture. So just use that. You don't need to do anything in the Lua script. It's just always there. Let's see here. Thank you so much, patrons. Thank you so much, Discord. Back RDFPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. I need a 3-inch guarded prop frame, approximately 3-inch, guarded prop frame for light acro and outdoor large space and indoor flying. It has to carry an air unit, but no GoPro. Squirt and Cinewhoop are too big. Squirt Cinewhoop is too big. Well, here's the thing, Back RD. If you want a 3-inch frame with prop guards, it's not going to get much smaller than a Cinewhoop, is it? Right? A Squirt is too big. Okay, so maybe a ProTech 3.5 or a ProTech 2.5. I gotta say, I don't have it handy, but I was really impressed with the Cinelog 2.5. Let me show you that one. Usually I fly a Cinewhoop, and I am not impressed with how it flies. Frankly, Cinewhoops usually fly like crap. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything too aggressive. And you kind of rein it in and try to hold back and keep it from just losing its mind. Like you do a big dive and the Cinewhoop just goes... Okay. So, but I flew the GepRC Cinelog 2.5 in my Cadets Peanut review, and I actually was pretty impressed. So, Back RDFPV, maybe what you want is a 2.5-inch, not a 3-inch. Especially if you're not planning on carrying a GoPro, the weight may not get you into too much trouble. There's also an iFlight ProTech 2.5, which a lot of people seem to like. And I feel like I should mention it. ProTech 2.5. When I tested these, I was not thrilled with the durability of the prop guards, but I hear they've upgraded them. A lot of pros seem to like the ProTech 2.5 as well. So I would check out the GepRC Cinelog 2.5 and the ProTech 2.5. If you're concerned about size, especially if you're not carrying a GoPro, I think you'll do okay with those. Nonas, thank you for a €1 super chat. Justin Rice, thank you for a $10 super chat. Is the DJI coaxial cable different than the Cadets for the air unit and camera? No, they are identical. They're identical. The back is different size. The back should not be different size. The Cadets and the DJI cable and camera, it's all the same. They're all comparable. Elijah Butler says, I have the Cinelog 25. Go for the ProTech. Elijah, I have to say, I mean, I haven't bashed the Cinelog 25 very much. I flew it to test the the Cadets Peanut and thought it flew well. What don't you like about the Cinelog 25, Elijah? Give us more info. I'd love to hear. GMI Visuals agrees the Cinelog 25 breaks too easily. Damn. Does the ProTech 25 not break easily? Is it better? Let's see here. How's the iFlight bag holding up? Asks Aiden S. Still so far so good. Martin Wynn says, thank you for a £5 super chat. Martin Wynn says, hi, I'm a patron. I tried to update it to a higher tier last night and no money off my card yet. Does it take the money straight away or is it on a certain day? Martin Wynn, the way I have my Patreon set up is it charges you at the beginning of the month. I believe it goes through on like the 4th or the 5th of the month. So if you raise to a higher tier, it doesn't charge you until the month rolls. So don't worry about that. But thank you for asking. Appreciate the concern. Zimergy JWT, thank you for a $5 super chat. I wore my JB FPV crate shirt to a Cub Scout camp and met another FPV dad that lives 5 minutes from me. Yay, new friends. Yeah, you got to wear your FPV gear out in public so people can know that you're an FPV pilot and how awesome you are. BackRD FPV wants to know, the ProTech 25 and the Cinelog will not fit a full-size air unit. Was that a requirement of yours? Has to carry an air unit. Oh. Ugh. Okay, I'm sorry. Back up. No, none of the frames I talked about will carry an air unit. If you want to carry an air unit, you're looking at, I mean, iFlight Bumblebee carries an air unit. All of the 3-inch frames that carry an air unit don't fly that great, honestly. And they're not that much smaller than a Squirt. So if the Squirt is too big, I think you're going to struggle to get an air unit in a Cinewhoop style frame smaller than about 3 inches. So that's a tough one. There we go. That's it. Is DJI making the next GoPro Hero Session? This is a render from Mo in my Discord. Mo tried to render the leaks of the new DJI action camera. I mean, holy dang. JT Knives, is that a render, dude? That looks, if that's a render, it's the best looking render I've ever seen. That looks real. That can't be real. That's a fake photo, right? JT Knives, is that real? Brandon RC in the Discord says, the Taycan is not much smaller than a Squirt, right? Yeah, exactly. That's my point. That's my point. There's not much smaller than a Squirt that will carry an air unit. That's my point. Yeah, JT, this is not real. This is just a comp. This is fake. It's a render. It's a very good-looking render. Here's the question. Like, the reason that I don't use the Osmo, it says FOV 155 degrees. The field of view is one of the reasons why I stay away from the Osmo Action. Really needs super view. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they come up with. It would be great if they come up with something good. David asks, my Tango 2, the yaw channel changes when I go from min to max throttle. How can it be fixed? That is a gimbal issue, and unfortunately there isn't a fix for it, short of potentially replacing the gimbal. I don't know. You really have to ask TBS support about this. If the throttle is down and the yaw channel is centered, and then you raise the throttle and the yaw channel is not centered, there's just something wrong with the gimbal. You can add deadband in the Betaflight receiver tab, you can add deadband, and that will cause it to kind of ignore a small amount of variance around the center. But you really want the gimbal to be working correctly. Let's take a look. Let me just show you where that is. Brian Lewis says he fixed the issue by calibrating. Calibration, that's a weird one. I guess it's worth a try to run calibration. Maybe they're doing something weird with calibration where they try to compensate for that. And if you miscalibrate, then when you raise it, it throws it off. I mean, I guess that's possible. It's very simple to redo the calibration, so it's probably worth a try. And make sure when you do the calibration and it says raise the throttle, you raise it straight up and leave it centered. If you need to use deadband, the deadband is here in the receiver tab. And it is right here. Yaw deadband is what you would use. You would just add a little bit of yaw deadband. Rauk FPV suggests the Terraplane for BackRD FPV who wants the Cinewhoop. The problem is he said a squirt's too big and a Terraplane's bigger than a squirt, so. Gel Captain wants to know, is it possible to flash the Immersion RC Ghost Hybrid Uno with Express LRS and still use the Tramp protocol for changing power band and channels? Gel, the Ghost Hybrids do have an external input for telemetry. So by default, they are wired between the Ghost receiver built into the hybrid and the Tramp VTX built into the hybrid. They're wired together and they control each other. But Immersion RC intelligently gave you an external telemetry wire as well if you want to use your flight controller to do it. So if you were to flash the hybrid to Express LRS, I would think you could still communicate with the VTX via that external telemetry wire. Chibi Kaiju wants to know if I've seen the XXX Bone 5 frame. It's ridiculous. All right, well. Oh, wow. Banggood. Banggood. You've done it. Wow. This is, this is surely inspired by the Rotorite Bone Drone. And Rotorite didn't come up with this idea first. Did they give credit? They didn't invent this idea. I saw it on Facebook first. Where's the, well, I don't see a link to the original Facebook post. They didn't invent this idea. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's possible Sean came up with this independently. But I saw this on Facebook before I saw Rotorite do it. Somebody came up with the idea to basically squeeze the quad on the side axis. So it's very narrow. And now Banggood has a version of it that you can buy. Including, are you... For real? Oh, Banggood. Banggood. Okay, that's the line, Banggood. Wow. Including Rotorite. Including Rotorite logo motor skids. Okay, that's the line. That's just the Rotorite logo. I draw the line at trademark infringement because people are going to think this is a Rotorite product. That's a clear line to me, is trademark infringement. Like showing another company's logo on your product when you are not that company. Because what happens is that customers now will think this is a Rotorite product, and when it sucks, they will contact Rotorite and complain about it and or think bad about Rotorite. Like, if you clone somebody else's frame, sometimes I'll care and sometimes I won't, and sometimes that just depends on how I woke up that morning. Like, I realize that people have accused me of hypocrisy because there are times when someone clones a frame and I go, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. And there are other times when someone clones a frame and I go, yeah, I don't like it. And it's not hypocrisy. It's just you don't understand my values. And I am not explaining them to you clearly, or you don't agree with them. So fine. But I don't think I've ever supported a case where one company copies another company's logo and sells a product, a counterfeit product. That is just over the line, in my opinion. Clearly over the line. Yeah. Because you are now directly doing harm to another company's reputation, and or you are costing them support dollars, because they're getting phone calls from people who say, I bought your product and it sucks. And the Rotor Riot support guy's like, okay, what did you buy? You bought the bone frame? We don't sell that. You bought it on Banggood? No, we don't sell through Banggood. And they're like, look, it's clearly your product. And for every customer that calls, and you get to say, hey, wait, we'll set the record straight, there are a lot more customers who never call and just think badly of you. So, yeah, don't copy the logos. That's the line. This is the Rotor Riot logo. This is a Rotor Riot product. That's the line. In my opinion. Skadoosh, I don't think they care. I'm just telling you where my line is. That's my line. Also, people in the comments are pointing out, there is no point for having motor skids on this. I mean, they look nice, but they will never skid, right? It's not possible. Anyway. Yeah, sorry, Banggood. Cross the line. Don't do it. Some companies do sell through Banggood, AA. You are correct. Am I sure that Rotor Riot isn't selling this through Banggood? I'm not 100% sure. XXXFPV, but the thing is, it's not labeled Rotor Riot. I guarantee you if Rotor Riot was selling it through, like Lumineer does this. You can find Lumineer products sometimes on Banggood. We actually, for a little while, we sold the JBF4 on Banggood just because it's an easy way of getting distribution. But it doesn't say Rotor Riot. It says XXXFPV. So I don't think this is an official Rotor Riot thing. If it is, I don't think so, because it would say Rotor Riot, wouldn't it? Why would they pass up the opportunity to say Rotor Riot? Also, look, yeah, no, it's different. They've got these channels in the arms for the wires. Rotor Riot doesn't have that. Oh, hang on. The picture doesn't have the Rotor Riot logo. Very interesting. Now, I don't think this is... I mean, it's not impossible, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Did Rotor Riot release the STLs to the motor skids? Maybe the Rotor Riot skids are just in the picture. Has Rotor Riot released the skids? I don't think so, because they sell the skids. If they release the STL for the skids... Huh. Is it in fact the actual... Oh, I've lost it. I don't think they released the STL. No, I mean, I guess I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they do. Anyway. Skidoosh says, the skids are injection molded, aren't they? Yeah. The Rotor Riot skids are injection molded. They're not 3D printed. So, yeah. Skidoosh says Zong from HQ makes the skids. Now, here is Coppertop FPV on Thingiverse. This certainly looks legit. That would explain where they got the design, I guess. What's the license? What license is it under? Oh, attribution license. Damn. Is commercial allowed? Even commercially. Oh, damn. If that's true, then it's okay for them to sell it, but they should still be attributing. They should still be attributing. Interesting. Oh, anyway. JT Custom Knives, thank you for $5 super chat. Just pointing out that this is not his DJI render. He just wants to be sure we know he didn't make this render. Fair enough. Gary Higgins asks, should I go ahead and buy the DJI goggles V2, or is there going to be a V3 anytime this year? Gary, no one knows. But look at the difference between the V1 and the V2. There wasn't that big of a difference. I think that a lot of people, if you're always waiting for the next thing to come out, I mean, it sucks to buy something and then like next month the new thing comes out, but there's no rumors of a V3 at this point. There weren't rumors of a V2 until very shortly before the V2 released, so it's a dice roll. But when people say, should I buy DJI today or should I wait for something better, there were people who waited for the V2 goggles for like 9 months. And all that time, they were not flying DJI, and they could have been. And some people feel that that's a price to pay. So I would probably just go ahead. But as soon as I say that, they're going to release the V3. And then, whoop, you'll be mad at me. But there's no rumors of a V3. Michael Hill, thank you for a $10 super chat. I was practicing my hovering skills in liftoff in and out of your barn and stuff at your house. Going up the side of the house, I seen you looking out the window. Yeah, they put me looking out the window in liftoff. It's true. There's a Bardwell face in the window. Floppy Props says, I downloaded Edge TX to my Jumper T18. It installed without Lua scripts. That's because the Lua scripts, you install the Lua scripts. I need Express LRS and Ghost. How do I install them? I mean, did you install them previously? It's the same, right? You download the Lua script and you put it in your scripts folder. Like, for example, I actually don't have the Ghost Lua script. I don't think Ghost has a Lua script. Ghost doesn't. It has widgets. There's Ghost widgets. So let's take a look. Let's see. Downloads. Downloads. Utility software. Ghost OpenTX widgets. Okay. So we download the widget zip file. We open it up. And then we're going to insert our SD card from our radio. But I don't have my radio plugged in right now, but I do have on my hard drive, I have a backup of my SD card, so we can go look at that. So here's my SD card. We're going to look at the Ghost folder. This is the zip folder. Main.lua and image. Background.png. Is that it? It's a little strange. Where did we put these things? To use the Ghost widgets, extract the contents of the widgets.zip file into the widgets folder of the SD card. Oh, that's pretty straightforward. All right, here is the widgets folder on the SD card. Oh, here's a Ghost widget. Should I put it in here or should I put it here? It seems like they're saying I should put it right here. Boom. That's what I would do. We'll see if that works. As far as Express LRS goes, to get the Express LRS widget, you need to download the Express LRS configurator. And I think, where's the widget link? Where have they put the widget link? They moved it into, there we go. Is it under support? No. Where have they put the widget link? It used to be right here. They've moved it. I swear they put it in this window. Is it under the TX options? TX. There we go. Was it under RX? No. It's so in Express LRS configurator, you need to pick a transmitter and you'll see download Lua script. So then we download the Lua script. Here it is, elrs.lua. And then here in downloads, we copy elrs.lua. And again, back on our SD card, we're going to go into scripts, tools, and we put it there. There you go. That's how you install them. Yeah, Jory thinks, I agree with you, Jory. That was a little weird. It looks like I have a ghost folder here, and that's where main.lua and image need to go. Yeah. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they can go into the widgets folder, but also can go into a subfolder. I don't really know. It is nice that they're there, though. What the hell is a widget? Asks JT Knives. I'm a Mac guy. In OpenTX on the radios with the big color screens, you can have widgets visible on the screen, which are just basically like it shows various information like your Ghost receiver or what it's doing, or your Ghost module what it's doing, and so forth. Yeah. Phil from KC, thank you for a $5 super chat. Says I ripped the S-Bus pad off on my F4 AIO flight controller. Any options? Nope. Yeah, okay. So Phil, what can you do? You can't use S-Bus anymore. F4, you're out of luck there. So depending on what receiver you have, you may have the option. Here, let me do images. You may have the option. Oh, perfect. You may have the option to use an uninverted S-Bus pad. So on the RXSR, for example, we've got the uninverted S-Bus pad here. If you can solder a wire to it, then that wire will output uninverted S-Bus. You can then connect that to any UART RX pad on the flight controller and get S-Bus input. That bypasses the problem that the S-Bus pad solves. You will need to go into the CLI and type set serial RX underscore inverted equals on. Oh, Jory, thank you. I see what you're saying. Yeah. The Ghost folder needs to go in the widgets. I went into the Ghost folder. That was my mistake. Thank you for pointing that out, Jory. That's what I get for doing stuff on the live stream without testing it. Yeah, so it would just be the Ghost folder going into the widgets folder. Well done. Yeah. So, that's how you would do that. Okay. The real answer is stop using FreeSky receivers with S-Bus. Inverted S-Bus is stupid. I know. GMI Visuals is suggesting the VFly GPS mate. Well, for a $2 super chat, let's take a closer look. The VFly GPS mate is a product that, first of all, it's a self-powered buzzer, so it helps you if you lose your quad. But also, it can be used to power your GPS before your quadcopter powers up. And that lets the GPS get its satellite sync without all the electrical noise and interference from all your other devices. Pretty clever little device. If you've got a GPS, it can increase the odds of getting a good GPS lock. Tasty Shrimp wants to know, do you have a video that has examples of what motors sound like with different tuning values? I have no idea what... People talk about trilling, rough, or oscillating motors, but I have no idea what it sounds like. No, is the short answer. I don't. That's a good idea for a video, but I don't have that. Rob R386 says, back in the day, I made an inverter with a transistor to use S-Bus on the NAS 32. Those were the days, man. The NAS 32 did not have an inverted input for S-Bus. So if you wanted to use FreeSky, you could buy an inverter or build your own inverter. It's pretty silly, but it did work. Which GPS modules are better than others? Asks RC Ritter FPV. RC Ritter, in my experience, the Maytech and the iFlight are some of the best. The Bentian are the worst. They work sometimes, often don't work. Glass Pound wants to know, do the Betaflight stick commands for calibrating and trimming the accelerometer work with EmuFlight? I assume they do. If they're not working, Glass Pound, the number one reason is that the angle mode is not activated. It used to be, like in Betaflight, well, EmuFlight is based on 357. That's weird. In older versions of Betaflight, the accelerator trim stick commands worked all the time. And then in like Betaflight 4.0 or 4.1, they changed it so you had to actually have angle mode active or they wouldn't work. And that's the most common reason why they don't work. But I would... So make sure angle mode is active. That's what I would say. Lix FPV says, I have a problem when I arm my Tiny Whoop in my hands and wiggle it. It begins to oscillate, then the motors stop. Does someone know this problem? Lix, I don't know why it's oscillating, but it's normal that if you move the quadcopter in your hand after arming, that it will disarm. The quadcopter has a mechanism called runaway protection, which if you arm it but don't raise the throttle yet, and it starts moving in an unexpected way, it will disarm itself because it's like something right here. So that's not abnormal. Now the oscillation, that's different, but I would say try to hover it. See if it hovers. Papa Gamer in the Discord asks, what happens if my failsafe is set to return to home, but that doesn't work? Does it change to drop? Yup. With Betaflight, GPS Rescue, if anything goes wrong, it just disarms. If it loses satellites, if it seems like it's descending too far or the altitude is changing in an unexpected way, there's a whole bunch of what they call sanity checks. And that, if any of the sanity checks fails, it just disarms. Okay. Let's see here. What other questions have we got? Lix FPV says it doesn't even hover. It starts to immediately oscillate as soon as I move the sticks and then the motors stop. Okay, so Lix, at that point, then you got to check your motor direction. Don't just work from memory. Go to the motors tab, look at the diagram, spin the motors one by one and look at the direction they're spinning. Or even better, get like a zip tie and touch the prop and see visibly which way it's spinning. Make sure the motors are spinning the right direction and make sure the props are on correctly. Those are the things to check. Hawkeye FPV wants to know what can cause Crossfire micro failsafes. Another Crossfire pilot powered up too close to you. Well, one pilot probably won't hurt, but if you were in an area with 3 or 4 other Crossfire pilots at high output power, they could cause micro failsafes. If you've got the wrong frequency band or region selected, if you're using 915 megahertz in Europe or 868 in the US and most of the rest of the world, you'll get full failsafes or micro failsafes. Those are some things that could cause it. Damaged antenna or damaged receiver. Whenever there's a problem with a receiver, one of the first things I ask is the problem happening only with one quad or is it happening with all of them? If it's happening with all of them, that points to your module. If it's happening to one quad, it points to your receiver. Double A says I would take the props off first. With a 75 millimeter whoop, I feel like it's okay not to take the props off. It's got prop guards. It's not going to do that much damage. For a 75 millimeter or smaller 65 millimeter whoop, I probably wouldn't bother taking the props off. Why am I not using race wire on my quads? Laziness. Just another thing to stock and another thing to... Well, ever since I started running my wires on the front or back of the arms, depending on which way the prop is spinning, I don't cut my motor wires. So it's just not an issue. Race wire just adds more solder joints and more complexity. It has some advantages, but to me it's not worth it. Tasty Shrimp says, bummer. I crashed my Mobula 6 and now I get 3 beeps when plugging in, but not the doot-doot. I get the doot-a-doot. And Windows complains there's a power surge when plugging into USB. Tasty Shrimp, I think you know the answer. You are hoping that it's not the answer, but deep in your heart, you know the truth. You killed the flight controller in your crash. It's dead. Especially the power surge when plugging into USB. He says, I looked at the board and I can't find anything that looks burnt out or shorted. It's dead, man. I'm sorry. We need to get... You're in the bargaining phase of the stages of grief. And we need to get through that to acceptance. The stages of grief. The 5 stages of grief of a dead flight controller. Number 1, denial. You know what? I bet my battery just came unplugged. Denial. But probably, my flight controller's probably fine. It was just a little bit of water got on it. It'll be fine. Just let it dry out overnight. It'll be okay. Anger. Freaking flight controllers! Freaking third one that's died this month! Can't believe it! People can't make a decent flight controller. Bargaining. That's pretty much emailing customer support. Hey, if I send you back this flight controller, will you send me a spare? Depression. I'm quitting the hobby. I'm never flying again. That's it. I can't do this. FPV is too much for me. I'm out. Acceptance. I guess my flight controller's dead. I'm gonna get the... Honey, I'm buying a new flight controller. It's the stages of grief as pertains to a dead flight controller. Victor Sig says, actually, some of my flight controllers did come alive after drying overnight. It happens. Aaron FPV says, I had one die yesterday. Mid-flash, my computer decided to try to reboot, and now I get only a half dim light when plugging in a battery or USB. Aaron FPV, it is basically impossible to kill a Betaflight flight controller permanently by flashing it. Even a power cycle during flash shouldn't. You should always be able to hold down the bootloader mode and flash it using DFU mode. Pretty much always. Unless it's physically damaged or literally fried. If you flash the wrong firmware or something, that won't kill it permanently. I Am Destructo Man is recommending rice to dry out wet electronics. So from not that rice doesn't work, but the people I have talked to, like who actually work in forensic electronics recovery, say that alcohol and moving air. So what you may not want to use alcohol. Maybe it doesn't really matter. But if you flush it with alcohol, that gets the water off it. The full protocol might be to rinse it in distilled water so that you get any dirt and other, obviously it's powered down. Rinse it in distilled water so you get dirt and dissolve away other sediment and minerals. Then rinse it in alcohol. Then put it in front of a fan. The moving air dries it better than the rice. Rice, it's not that rice doesn't work, but that's a kind of a hack. And putting it in front of a fan for like 2 days works better. Chibi Kaiju says, airflow and a little heat are the best for me. Agree, Chibi Kaiju. That's what the pros do. A little bit of heat and some moving air. You could put it in like a fruit dehydrator or something. That'll work. So, yeah. One of the things to keep in mind about moisture is that moisture will leave minerals behind, and those minerals can result in corrosion after the fact. And I don't really know how this works, but you can get a situation where it dries out, it works fine for like a week, and then it dies. And something about the minerals in the water caused the problem. Yeah, I don't know how it works, but especially if it's salt water, but even if it's fresh water, the best thing to do is to rinse it first with distilled water. Distilled water doesn't have any minerals in it. You can get distilled water at like Walmart. You could distill your own if you really want to. It's craft distilled water. So distilled water, then alcohol, then heat and moving air is the best way to do it. Gentle heat, not excess heat. The thing is, if you put it in a bag of rice, the rice is going to get like rice powder all over it, and that's going to be a freaking mess. So. XXX601 in the Discord asks, do you think the side plates on the Nazgul Evoke can cause overheating in the Vista due to insufficient airflow? I have flown 30 packs on the Nazgul Evoke. I didn't have the Vista overheat at all during flight. It overheats if you plug it in and leave it sitting, but they all do that, especially if you're at 1200 milliwatts. Now, does it overheat faster on the ground? I don't know, but it never overheated in the air, so I don't think it's an issue. Super Deluxe, thank you for a $10 super chat. They want some JB branded red electrical tape. I don't know about that. I only brand products if I'm adding something to the product. I don't just slap my name on products to make a fast buck on your enthusiasm. I can't think of any way that I would improve red electrical tape, so I probably won't be doing a branded one. Vic and Air FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. I took your advice and bought a Sovol SV01, and I am loving it. I did the silent mainboard and BL touch upgrade. She's running like a champ. Thanks, JB. I also love my Sovol SV01. It's a great printer. Aiden S., thank you for a $5 super chat. Do you think the FreeSky Tyranis X9 Lite with R9M is a good option for a cheap transmitter? Could I run Express LRS on that combo? Yes, you can run Express LRS on that combo. No, I don't think R9 is a good option for I don't recommend that you buy R9 hardware. The Tyranis X9 Lite is a solid radio. If you bought that with the express intent of flashing it to Express LRS, okay, but you could also, I mean, that's okay. I think R9 is a pain in the ass. Not everybody feels that way, I should say, but I think it's a pain in the ass. You will need to flash the X9 Lite with OpenTX. Well, doesn't it ship with OpenTX? No, sort of. It ships with a custom FreeSky build of OpenTX, and they leave out Crossfire support. Well, I don't know for sure that that's true on the X9 Lite. It is true on some radios. I know for a fact that some FreeSky radios, when you first get them, if you go to like select Crossfire as a protocol, it's just not there. I don't know that the X9 Lite has that. You might need to flash it. But sure. X9 Lite is solid. And the R9 modules are good hardware. It's just the firmware is a pain in the ass. So you could flash it to Express LRS. You should think about just buying an Express LRS module, though. Right? Why buy an R9 module and then flash it to Express LRS? Pacific Northwest Pilots wants to know, if it came down to analog or SharkBite, would you choose SharkBite at 200 milliwatts or wait for the 1 watt VTX? Wait. SharkBite at 200 milliwatts is fine for racing. The range and penetration are completely inadequate for general purpose use, freestyle, cruising, etc. It just is. It's I can barely get off my property with the 200 milliwatt VTX, which is fine. It's only 200 milliwatts. It's fine for racing. I would not choose it for general use. I hope that the 1 watt VTX is way, way better. Erie 509 FPV wants to know if the Spectrum SRXL2 receiver has issues with the Jumper T16. Erie, no, none that I know of. I don't know for sure whether it supports telemetry. The SRXL2 receiver supports telemetry. I don't know for sure whether the Jumper T16 will receive that telemetry. But, yeah. Salmon Rose says you have to flash a TBS nightly to get Crossfire on the X9 Lite. I don't think that's true, respectfully, Salmon Rose. If I open up OpenTX Companion, oops, there we go. If I open OpenTX Companion and I go Settings, Radio Profiles, Add Radio Profile, Radio Type. Hang on. There you go. Now you can see what I'm doing. It's the X9 Lite. Oh, the X9 Lite, not the X Lite. What are you talking about? Hold on. Did you say X9 Lite or X Lite? Where are you? Where's your comment? The X9 Lite, I see. So I guess the X9 Lite isn't here. Is that right? X9 Lite. No, there it is. Duh. Yeah, so here's OpenTX for the X9 Lite. Here's OpenTX for the X Lite. I guarantee you that Crossfire is in these, because all the OpenTX builds include Crossfire. So I don't think that's true. I don't think you have to flash the TBS nightly. And if you're thinking of Crossfire shot, that is also in the OpenTX builds. TinXD wants to know, what's the sweet spot for the weight of a 6S Freestyle drone? I love them when they're down close to 700 grams, but I find it hard to get them that light when carrying a GoPro. I feel like between 700 and 750 is the sweet spot for me. Some people like them as much as 800. I don't think a lot of people like flying a 5-inch above 800, though. Darkstar FPV says, Diatone Roma F5, so weak. Motors, Toka Motors, very weak. Your thoughts, Joshua? You broken yours yet? No, I haven't broken mine yet. They upgraded the arms on the V2. So if you have the Diatone Roma F5 V1, you need to get the V2 arms and replace the V1 arms when they break, which they will. The Toka motors, the spokes were thin and the motors were breaking where the spokes joined the sidewall, but they released a V2 of the motor where they thickened up the spokes, and that also seems to have addressed the issue. So I'm going to guess you have the weak motors and arms, but they've upgraded it. So you just need to upgrade those things, I guess. In the Attic FPV says, my camera lens is hazed up. Do you know any way to take the haze out? How did it get hazed? I tried to polish it, but I think it made it worse. Just buy a new one? Buy a new lens? I don't know if you're going to fix it. I don't know how you would fix it. Coaxial FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. I have a Lux F7 running Betaflight 4.2. I want a Flash 429. When I hold the bootloader button and plug in, Windows says USB device malfunctioned. Other flight controllers work fine. I have no idea, Coaxial. I have no idea. The bootloader code is in ROM on the chip. It basically can't be damaged by flashing or software. Every time I say that, people point out that if you have an STM32 programming utility, you can break the DFU mode. Well, okay, but that's obviously not what I mean. Like with Betaflight Configurator, you can't break it. If other flight controllers work fine, it says that your drivers are fine. I can't imagine what would cause just the DFU mode to break. And I don't know what you could do to fix it either. Coaxial, that's a tough one, and I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately. Alley Oop, thank you for a $5 super chat. My Tiny Hawk 2 Freestyle, I crashed it. It will arm and take off, and a few seconds later, just everything drops and it falls out of the air. Well, what happens when it falls out of the air? Do you lose video? Does video go to static? Do you hear the motors go, dude? These are things that would tell us what's happening when it falls out of the air. We need that information in order to troubleshoot that further. Andy Dredd asks, why does my new Express LRS 2.4 gigahertz setup dramatically outperform my Tracer setup at the same 100 milliwatts? What can I do to get Tracer to perform like my Express LRS setup, like no fail-safes? Oh, that question is a freaking setup if ever I saw one. Let me just spike that over the net. The reason is that TBS insists on using a type of modulation called FLRC modulation. FLRC modulation is a way of transmitting the signal that is higher data rate. So you could get higher packet rate, like 250 hertz, but you get shorter range. So TBS has made the decision that what they want to provide to their customers is 250 hertz with telemetry, because telemetry takes up data too. And in order to accomplish that, they're using FLRC modulation, which has a shorter range. Express LRS uses low raw modulation, short for long range. Low raw modulation is lower data rate, but much longer range than FLRC. So here's the thing. Because I can get 250 hertz on Express LRS, and I have telemetry, and I have much greater range. So you might ask, how? And the answer is that Express LRS they make the data that they send more efficient. They send less data, which means that Express LRS can operate at 250 hertz even when using LoRa and having less data rate to work with. Now, there are some things that Crossfire will do, or Tracer will do, that Express LRS won't do, because Crossfire or Tracer has more data in its packets. The most significant one is that Crossfire, Tracer, has all of its aux channels, 8 or 12, depending on how you configure it. All of its aux channels are full precision. You could run servers. You could run servos off of all of its aux channels. Whereas in Express LRS, the aux channels some of them are like 2 position. You literally only have 2 positions. You can't run it. You couldn't run it. I mean, you could run a servo off it, but it would just go zoop, zoop, zoop. You couldn't just run a full servo or do anything else that requires a full aux channel. Some of them are 3 positions. Some of them are 6 or 8, or even I think they have 1 16 position. I don't remember all the details. So there are some trade-offs with Express LRS where you give something up to get that longer range. But here's the thing, and I will keep saying this every time it comes up, because because I think TBS is wrong. TBS is doing wrong by their customers by making this decision. That's a strong statement, but I feel like it's true, and I'm going to keep making it. The hardware in your tracer module, say it with me if you've heard this song before, it is capable of doing low raw modulation. And TBS has turned it off or not turned it on, depending on how you want to look at it. So you could get the increased range that Express LRS has with your tracer module, but TBS will not give it to you. Now, you wouldn't get the same range. Express LRS, even if TBS enabled low raw in tracer, Express LRS would still have more range, milliwatt for milliwatt, because the fact that Express LRS uses less data means that they can go further, basically, at the same milliwatt. But you could get way more range out of out of tracer. Now, you would have to go down from 250 milliwatts. So what would have to happen is you would have 250 milliwatt FLRC with telemetry, or maybe you could have 150 hertz. I'm sorry, I said milliwatt, 250 hertz. You could have 150 hertz low raw, and you get a ton more range, but it would be higher latency. TBS has decided that tracer is for racing, and we're going to do 250 hertz, and that's it. And Crossfire is for long range. And it's I don't know why they've made that decision. I feel like it's a marketing driven decision and not a customer focused, because there's no reason why they couldn't just with a little bit of development effort. Okay, it's not free. I mean, they would have to develop the code, but that's what they do. They could just release a firmware version that unlocks low raw in tracer right now. And if you were willing to come down on your packet rate and go up on your latency, you could get significantly increased range. And they just are choosing not to do it. And it's anti-customer. It's good for their business, I think, is why they're doing it. But I think it's bad for their customers. And I think that people are going to reject tracer as a result. And I don't know if they've done the math and decided that the number of people who reject tracer is worth whatever else they're getting on the other side of that equation. And I don't know if they're right about that. But I think that if TBS truly cared about offering their customers the best, the capability is in the hardware. And it pisses me off when TBS says we know better than our customers. And the customers say, please, can we have this thing? And TBS is like, no, we know better what is good for you. And it's not the first time they've done it. They refused to put MMCX connectors on their VTXs for a long time. They said UFL is what you should have. And their MMCX connectors have downsides. Don't get me wrong. But customers said, can we please have a Unify with an MMCX connector? And for a long time they said, no, we're not going to do that. Then they did it. And now some of them have MMCX, some of them have UFL. You can decide. So. Super Deluxe, I'm making you a mod so you can share the link to the leaked Orca 2s. People are asking. I have Destructo Man. The 2.4 gig chipset that's in Tracer definitely can do LoRa. It definitely can. Ghost, Tracer, and Express LRS 2.4 gig all use the SX1280 and 1281 chip. Thank you, It's Blunty, for that information. They all use the same chip, and they all could have the exact same capabilities. The Semtech 1280 chip. So, operating LoRa on Tracer would break the law in the EU. I mean, Lee Kitching, I don't know if that's true. If that is true, gosh, what precedent is there for having different regions in a TBS module? Crossfire has running 915 megahertz in EU is also illegal. Crossfire lets you set the region, and then it does what it needs to do based on the region. The thing is, here's the thing. If Tracer had the ability to do LoRa at 150 hertz and go out 10, 20, 30, whatever kilometers, Crossfire would be dead, in my humble opinion. Nobody would buy Crossfire, except the really long-range guys. Nobody would buy Crossfire, and I feel like that's the reason why TBS isn't doing it. Right now, people who want low latency go with Tracer. People who want long range go with Crossfire. And you cannot have low latency and long range in one. And it's a common thing that happens in business where you get so big that you are afraid to compete with yourself. And it leaves you open for a competitor to come eat your lunch. And that is what is at risk of happening with Express LRS. Now, the build quality of Express LRS receivers, I would wager a large amount of money that the build quality, if you buy 1,000 Happy Model Express LRS receivers and 1,000 Crossfire receivers, you'll get more bad receivers that don't make spec or that have some damage or defect out of the Happy models. And if you do a survey of people 2 years later and say, how many of your Happy Model receivers are still alive versus how many of your Crossfire receivers, I would wager that the TBS is probably made to a higher quality, and TBS is probably engineered to a higher standard. I'm happy to stipulate that. But a lot of people are just annoyed. They're like, well, I want 2.4 gigahertz and I want low latency, but I'm annoyed at the fact that Tracer under real world conditions only goes maybe 2 or 3 kilometers. I know Wesley Vardy flew Tracer out to like 25 kilometers under ideal conditions. I know. Whatever it was, 20, 30 kilometers. Anyway. So just do it. Release the firmware update. Unlock more RF modes in Tracer, TBS. You know that's what's good for your customers. Deep in your heart, you are the good guys. Mostly. I think TBS, deep in their heart, definitely wants to do right by their customers, and it's so confusing to me why they won't. And Trappy said, I asked him about, I'm not going to give you a direct quote, especially because this conversation was old, and I don't want to disclose private communication, but the gist of what he said was, in a couple of years, nobody's going to even think about LoRa anymore. He said FLRC is the future. And I think what he meant was that FLRC is going to be good enough that no one will care, except maybe super long distance pilots, about the capabilities of LoRa. I think he's wrong about that. I think the popularity of Express LRS shows that he's wrong about that. So. Gel Captain, you are correct that 900 megahertz will have more penetration than 2.4 gigahertz. But when using LoRa, 2.4 gig has so much penetration that it kind of doesn't matter. You're going to outrun your video link either way. So, all right. Bardwell did his Tracer LoRa rant again. Oh, good. That's a good one. You've heard it before. It's a live stream. You get what you get. We are coming to the end of the stream. It's almost 3 p.m. Coming to the end of the stream. Is Siati here? Is Siati going to be streaming at 3 p.m.? I don't see him in the chat. Maybe he'll show up. M2KFPV says, my Vista Quad freezes video on flips and rolls. My AIO board is known for a batch of bad gyros. Could this be the cause? No, a bad gyro will not cause your Vista to freeze up. If the Vista freezes up, the most likely thing is the power to the Vista is brown. Like you've got a voltage regulator and the power is browning out. You could always power a Vista off of VBAT, at which point if it freezes up, then it's a wiring issue probably. If you do power a Vista off of 6S VBAT, make sure you have a capacitor and a spike absorber, or it could be damaged. So be careful about that. But usually it's a voltage regulator browning out. Ciati is not streaming today. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see. Unfair Frame 653 in the YouTube chat asks, I got your beginner kit. I have a ton of problems with it. It falls out of the sky when I flip it, and the motors do a weird vibration sound when throttling up. What's happening? I mean, Unfair Frames, there's a process of trying to troubleshoot whether you've got bad hardware or whether there's something that happened when you were building it that is causing these problems. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to just respond to that comment and go, oh, yeah, here's the problem. It would require some back and forth. You're welcome to email me, joshuabardwell@gmail.com, and I will do my best to help you figure out what's going on. So that's all I can say about that. Corey Man says, I use Ghost. It's the best of both worlds. I have to say, Corey Man, I agree with you. If I had to pick, like I fly it all. I fly Crossfire, I fly Tracer, fly Express LRS, I fly Ghost. I don't own a single FreeSky quad right now. So it feels so good to say that. But if I had to pick one control link today to use forever, it probably would be Ghost, although forever is a long time. I say that because Express LRS is high performance, but it's a little bit of a hassle that it doesn't have like over-the-air firmware updates. You have to flash it via Wi-Fi or flash it via serial. Not the end of the world, but it is nice with Ghost, Tracer, and Crossfire when you bind and it just goes, update firmware? Yes. And then you wait a few minutes and it's done. That's pretty convenient. Ghost has up to 500 hertz low latency, or down to like, I think it's 50 hertz, maybe even lower, long range. You have every possibility of performance and latency. You could just choose. Piranha32 says Express LRS may soon have over-the-air firmware updates. Oh, well, that'll be really cool. That'll be a great step in the right direction. I mean, I think Ghost is very compelling. Because they offer they let you choose the trade-off between range, penetration, and latency in a way that Crossfire Tracer doesn't. Express LRS does. Express LRS, you can choose your packet rate and make that trade-off. Express LRS doesn't use FLRC for what it's worth. So if Express LRS was willing to let you use, I should make the same complaint about Express LRS that I do about Tracer. It's just the other direction, I guess, if I were trying to be consistent. That the Express LRS devs could unlock FLRC modulation, and then they could potentially have full range servo aux channels with none of this compression BS, and they haven't done it. But the difference is the Express LRS devs are all working for free. It's open source. They don't make any money. They just do it for fun in their spare time. And Crossfire is a company with customers who pay them money. And so there's a obligation there that doesn't exist with open source devs. Anyway. 2 minutes to the end of the stream, folks. We're going to be wrapping up soon. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And throughout the week. By the way, I always forget to mention this, but podcasts that you say, well, can I listen to your live streams as a podcast? Podcasts on my live stream are available to patrons only on the Discord server. So if people say, hey, well, you should put your stuff up on a podcast service. I say, I do. It's called Patreon. $2 a month. you get access to that, among other great things. So link in the video description. Well, that is going to do it for the stream today, though, folks. We're going to wrap up. Thank you so much. Mr. Girem asks, how many of those quads behind you are airworthy? Almost all of them are airworthy. The broken ones are in the closet. So that's going to do it, guys. We're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming out. I will see you tomorrow night. Happy flying, everybody. Hope Ciati's having a great time wherever he is, though. Bye, everybody.